So unless you've been sticking your head in the sand, living under a rock, or just overall ignoring the average day-to-day business goings of the movie theater industry, then you would know that movie theaters are not doing too hot. I mean, whether it's the COVID-19 restrictions or it's just the overall general rise of streaming and on-demand videos, movie theaters have just never been in a worse place than they are right now, except for arguably maybe the Great Depression, but you're also talking the 1920s when movies were kind of an emerging concept. So it's something that's like, it's kind of hard to really quantify, and it's hard to really like compare and contrast. And just arguably because of the way that films are made nowadays and because they do nothing but get more expensive, they're not in a good place. And a lot of people, like I said, do attribute that more to COVID than to anything else. But the harsh truth of the matter is COVID might be the second worst enemy of movie theaters right now. And number one is streaming services. But before we get into the pros and cons of it and asking you what your opinion is, just want to take a brief moment to remind you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's helping us out quite a bit. We're still doing our best to try and get out consistent content. I know it seems very inconsistent. I promise there is a certain schedule to it, but we're trying to figure it out as we go along. But either way, leave us a comment down below and let us know what you think of this topic. We'd love to hear from you. But without further ado, let's get into it. So before I talk about the cons of this thing, I do want to briefly throw some numbers around to kind of give you an idea of what exactly the behemoth of a fight that movie theater chains are really looking at right now. So number one, we got to look at this from the perspective of movie studios themselves. Let's use Warner Brothers as an example because they're definitely people who are in a little bit of a crosshairs right now after their announcement that they will be releasing all of their new releases same day or possibly even earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up happening on their HBO Max streaming service as simultaneously while they go to theaters. Now, we saw this very recently with Wonder Woman 1984, and we did also see Disney try to do it with Mulan back in, I believe, October or September of last year. Of last year? No, that was this year. In October or September of this year, and there were mixed results on both ends. You've probably seen a lot of people saying, oh, well, Wonder Woman proves that you can do it or whatever because it made, $80 million plus despite the fact that most theaters are still shut down. But you do also have to bear in mind that HBO is also not charging you to see Wonder Woman. They are charging you to use their service, but Wonder Woman is included in that service. With Mulan, you had to pay to see the movie on top of the subscription fee you were already paying for Disney+. Now, yes, it did grant you the ability to own the movie when it was released. It was essentially a pay-on-demand or pay-per-view kind of thing. It was like, oh, cool, well, I'm already paying you $15 a month, and now you want $30 more to watch Mulan, but eventually I get to own it. That's cool. What if I don't like it? Well, I mean, too bad. You paid to see it, so it sucks to be you. And this led a lot of people to thinking, well, Mulan didn't do very well, not even mentioning all the boycott shit that happened to it. And a lot of people assumed that Wonder Woman was going to follow a similar trajectory. That people were just not going to be into it because, well, let's be honest, a lot of people can't really afford, really extravagant home theater setups where you feel like you're actually experiencing a movie theater kind of movie. So it was this weird kind of juxtaposition of like, we understood what Warner Brothers was trying to do, but comparing it to your at-home experience was going to be basically impossible. But as I was saying, when you look at this from the studio's perspective, it's kind of a win-win for them. I mean, not only are they making money off of your subscription, but most people, and I hate to say this in this particular way because I'm guilty of it as well, the average person is pretty lazy. The majority of us are, we're fine to argue on Reddit and we're fine to argue in forums and on websites and everything about, oh, we want movie theaters back, we want to do this, we want to do that. And I'm willing to bet the majority of us still watched Wonder Woman, and I'm willing to bet that a pretty good chunk of us still paid to see Mulan. I mean, even if you want to call it an experiment, it was a successful experiment. Here's just a few numbers for you to be aware of. In the US alone, we have a population of 320 plus million people. Okay? Inside of the US, we also have 192 currently active paying Netflix accounts. Over 50% of our population have an active concurrent Netflix account. Paid subscriptions, by the way. This is not even taking into account the fact that it's average that one person with a Netflix account is sharing it with 6 other people. So you got to figure at that rate, close to about 70 to 85% of the US has an active Netflix subscription that they either take off of somebody else or they're paying themselves out of their own pocket. Similarly, Hulu, the second leading trajectory, has a little bit over 80 million. They're doing just fine for themselves as well. And then you look at Disney Plus, they have a little bit over 60 million. And the newcomer to the pack, HBO Max, is doing very well for themselves with just about hitting 9 million concurrent users. Now, it would be remiss of me to say that these are all different categories of people, right? Because odds are, of those 192 million active Netflix accounts, those people are probably also making up a pretty sizable chunk of the people who also own the Hulu accounts, the Disney Plus accounts, and the HBO Max accounts. But you do see what I'm saying here, or at least I hope you do. Over 50% of your national population has access to the 4 major streaming services and is actively using them and is actively still paying them, so they are in use and they are being viewed, they are being used by them and by others. Well, then what exactly do you have to lose by releasing new releases strictly on your streaming service? Number 1, you don't have to pay a fee to any movie theater companies. Number 2, you get to keep all the royalties to yourself. You don't have to pay anything to anyone. 3, you don't really have to pay to get any extra commercial time. You don't have to pay to get any specific trailers for certain theater companies, because they do that sometimes. You basically get to keep all the money, especially if it's releasing only on your platform. I mean, eventually it might make its way to Netflix or to Hulu, who's kind of more of an umbrella sort of streaming service. But for the most part, it's probably going to stay on your platform for the foreseeable future, which forces people to then adopt into your subscription and get into your ecosystem. And when you can guesstimate that 192 million people, or in some cases 80 million, or in some cases 8.6 million, which again are only active accounts, it's not saying how many people have access to that account, then you gotta figure, well, you're still reaching arguably the same amount of people that you were reaching before the COVID-19 pandemic and when people had access to movie theaters. So when you look at it that way, and when you look at the cold hard facts of the situation, yes, Warner Brothers does kind of deserve the shit they've been getting. Same with Disney, same with Hulu, same with Netflix. But this really was the logical next evolution of entertainment consumption in the movie industry. This is the way that we've been going for a long time, guys. So with that being said, though, I do want to end this video with kind of my personal thoughts and why I actually do believe that this is a bad thing. So the first opinion that I have on it, I only really have 2 opinions. Don't worry, I'm not going to keep you here as long as I did for the Tyler Glockner video. My first opinion on it is that it's going to completely kill, maybe not immediately, and maybe only over the course of 20 years or so, but it's going to completely kill the indie movie scene. I think we can kind of all admit that. It's not going to be good, because what's going to happen? Well, if Cinemark is the only movie theater company who can hold out, and from the looks of how things are going with AMC, odds are they are going to be the only ones who walk away from the COVID-19 pandemic with a hand still in the arena. And if indie movies can only afford to go to one theater, well, they've basically slashed the amount of income they're going to get from a movie into a quarter. And they already don't make a whole lot of money. So then what are they going to have to do? Well, they're going to have to sell themselves out to a corporation. They're going to have to sell their soul. They're going to have to sell the passion of their film. And they're going to have to say, hey, we originally were only going to release this through A24 and Cinemark, but the fact of the matter is we need to turn a profit to make our next movie. So Warner Brothers, how would you like to have this as an exclusive on HBO Max after 2 weeks in theaters? This is what's going to happen, guys. The indie movie scene, it isn't going to die immediately, and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's apocalyptic, but it's pretty damn near. And the unfortunate thing, too, is that we were finally starting to hit a point where the indie movie scene was really starting to get some solid recognition with films like Parasite. We really were going in a right direction for that. And there's so much more creative than your average blockbuster, and unfortunately, it's going away, really. And again, I don't mean to say that like it's dead. Like there's been some Netflix originals, there's been some Hulu originals, there's been some Amazon Prime originals that are absolutely stellar examples of indie filmmaking. But they do also have to kind of curtail themselves to the rules of Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. So it's kind of like you have to pick and choose, but it's a difficult choice to make. It's really not easy to do. And that's kind of my primary concern with this reliance on streaming and going more this route of like, hey, here's your 4 major release people, or technically five if we're counting Amazon Prime. You know, basically suck it up, buy all 5, or you don't get to experience X, Y, and Z movies. That's basically the realm we're going. We're basically going, the movie industry is basically going the way of video game exclusives. Hey, you wanted to play Halo Infinite? Fuck you, go buy an Xbox Series X. Oh, you invested in a PS5? Suck my dick, we're never coming to there. You know what I mean? Like, you can go on YouTube and watch a walkthrough of Halo Infinite, but it's not exactly the same experience now, is it? So my second opinion of it is really kind of more of a personal gripe. The movie theater experience is something that I never want to go away. And I know that some people really don't understand that. I was actually surprised how many people I've met who don't understand what I meant by that. The feeling of going to a midnight premiere, even though you can go see the movie 4 hours earlier at 7 o'clock. The going to a midnight premiere, standing in line, hanging out with your bros, and having just this nostalgia trip, if you want to call it that, is an experience that I just don't want to go away. And similarly, seeing something that was shot in IMAX on a massive IMAX screen, or just seeing a really big expansive movie with this premium surround sound and this massive screen in front of you and these throngs of quiet people, hopefully, that are enjoying the movie along with you, is just an extremely special experience. And I really don't want to make this sound like I'm saying like movie theaters are going to go away, but we are getting dangerously close to having very limited options. And I will say, guys, I will not be in the least bit surprised if one of 2 things happen once the pandemic has kind of died down a little bit and things start to return to a little bit of normalcy. Either number 1, we're going to see major theater companies or get bought out by massive movie studios. Like Warner Brothers will buy out Cinemark, or Disney will offer to buy out AMC and give them like exclusive viewing properties. Or we're going to see streaming services open up their own movie theaters. I, for one, if Netflix opened up a movie theater company, I'd be in line probably every week. I would kill to see Netflix original films. Some of them, especially something like Beasts of No Nation or something like that, I would kill to see that in a movie theater. Are you kidding me? If Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime came out with their own movie theater companies, I would be one of the first people in line. But that would also mean that we'd be going the realm of exclusivity. Like, hey, cool, we're a Netflix theater-owned company, so if Disney doesn't want to show movies on our platform, then we're not going to shell out the money to show it here. And like I said, guys, that's just the unfortunate truth of it, is that with the numbers being what they are, and with reality being what it is, and being in the shit show that is 2020, this is the way things are going. But I would love to hear what you guys think of this. I'd love to hear what you think of the overall situation. If you think it's good, if you think it's bad, if you think it's garbage, I want to hear from you. I really do want to know your opinion on it. I would love to have a conversation with you about it in the comments, so please leave a comment. I'm not the best at replying to comments if that hasn't become increasingly obvious. I kind of work myself to the bone most days, and I won't lie, I tend to ignore some notifications, but I am trying my damnedest to get better at that, so hold me accountable to it. I'm begging you. Make me accountable. So that is going to be it for me, guys. Like I said, please leave me a comment down below. Let's get started with a conversation. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will talk to you next time.